It's done now, except for the final decision. And let's be real, Sean Diddy Combs isn't sleeping peacefully this weekend, not in that federal jail down in southern Manhattan. The battle inside the courtroom is over. Both sides have emptied their clips. Now, the jury holds all the power. Will they crown him a criminal mastermind, pulling the strings of a secret world of racketeering and abuse behind his fame? Or just see him as a wealthy, powerful black mogul with a taste for wild sex and an obsession with privacy? Diddy's defense team hammered one message home: this wasn't about lawbreaking. This was about persecution. A public execution of a successful black man who climbed his way from the bottom. And they weren't subtle. His lawyer said it out loud: Diddy's being hunted not because of what he did, but because of who he is. The jury includes black members. Maybe they'll feel that in their bones. Maybe they won't. Maybe no one will. Or maybe everyone will. But one thing's for sure, this defense didn't come to play it safe. This morning, the air inside that courtroom was electric. It was the defense's last shot, and when Diddy's lead attorney rose from his seat, the entire vibe shifted. No mountains of evidence. No clunky PowerPoints. No text messages flashing across the screen like the prosecution did yesterday. He just looked at the jury and said, "I want to talk to you." And oh, he talked. This wasn't a legal speech, it was a performance. A solo act. Smooth. Confident. Bold. Sometimes borderline cocky. But always locked in with the jury, eye to eye. He aimed to be the voice of reason in a hurricane of accusations. The calm inside the chaos. Then came the twist. This case, he said, it's not about crime. It's about love. A love story. A modern, chaotic, sex-charged love story. Complete with swingers in luxury hotels. Jealousy. Regret. Homemade adult films. And so much kink the courtroom squirmed. And yes, he said this, verbatim. If your partner likes something, and you don't like it, but you truly love them, then their likes become your likes. That's love. It felt less like a closing argument and more like a late-night couples therapy session. But here's where the shadows really crept in, the lawyer standing beside Diddy. He once defended Keith Raniere. Yes, that Raniere. The sex cult kingpin behind NXIVM. Convicted of racketeering, forced labor, sex crimes, you name it. Sentenced to 120 years in 2019. And now, Diddy, a mogul with power, money, and a private life full of secrets, hires the same guy? People are asking, why would a billionaire trust his freedom to someone whose last client is going to die behind bars? That's what makes this wild. The man who couldn't save Raniere is now asking 12 jurors to believe in a love story. Not a legal strategy. A Hail Mary. So what exactly did those jurors hear? First, they saw Diddy, same look every day. Collared shirt. Sweater. Clean. Calm. This time, the sweater was sand-colored. A new uniform for a new life. Then the attorney began with compliments. He called the jury one of the most focused and thoughtful panels he's ever faced. A testament to the jury system, he said. And to this country. A little flattery to grease the wheels? Smart. Then the lines were drawn. There are two trials here, he told them. One is about the evidence, what you heard and saw. The other, a fictional tale spun by the government. And that's when he painted Diddy's portrait. Not a villain, but a visionary. A self-made black tycoon who rose from nothing, built an empire, and gave back to his roots in the Bronx. He didn't just start a business, he built a legacy. And the defense didn't call a single witness. They didn't need to. Even the prosecution's own witnesses, he claimed, praised Diddy's genius, creativity, and leadership. What Diddy built? It was messy, but it was real. The lawyer brought race to the center. He reminded the jury that Diddy embraced diversity way before it was trendy or required. In 1993, at 24 years old, he said, because that's just who he is. Then he flipped the script, calling this trial a fake one. A government rewrite of Diddy's life story. Turning ambition into conspiracy. Turning sex into federal crime. Turning privacy into prosecution. He pointed toward the family section. 6 of Diddy's 7 children were there. The 7th, Just an infant. You should know who he is, he told the jury. He takes care of people. He even brought up one of the women involved in the case. She's living in a home Diddy paid for, he said. I hope she's having a beautiful day. Then came the mockery. He ridiculed the FBI raid on Diddy's home, where agents seized boxes of Astroglide. Yes, that kind. He mocked them, saying, "The streets of America are safe from the Astroglide. I feel safer already." He laughed about the 5 Valium pills, too. "Way to go, fellas," he said, dripping sarcasm. He went full throttle on the government, attacking the very premise of their case. "If every hotel room Diddy ever stayed in is a crime scene now," he said, "then what are we talking? 200 rooms? 300? Then, grinning, better go grab a bigger roll of crime scene tape." And just like that, he pulled the jury deeper into the defense's world. They didn't call the cops. They didn't go to the FBI. They called a lawyer. A civil lawyer. And that's how this entire firestorm started, when Cassie filed a lawsuit demanding $30 million. "That's where this all began," Diddy's defense said to the jury. "And just like that, we were back where the defense wanted us, love." According to them, the word love was spoken 881 times during the trial. And they weren't letting go of it now. He looked the jury in the eye and admitted it. Yes, what Cassie went through was violent. And yes, they owned that. They didn't dodge it. They didn't sugarcoat it. They said, flat out, yes, he did that. But then came the twist. He didn't do what he's charged with. And he will fight to the death against the things he didn't do. And that's the argument. Not that Diddy is innocent of everything, but that this trial is not about what the charges say. Even Cassie, they argued, after the hotel hallway video went viral, never accused Diddy of trafficking or rape. She said it was domestic violence. So if you believe her, the defense said, then believe her all the way. And then, like something out of a messy romance novel, came the emotional pivot. Their 11-year relationship. According to the defense, intense, long, and beautiful. He walked the jury through the beginning. Cassie already had a boyfriend, but lied and told him she was going to a party. Instead, she went to a boat Diddy had rented in Miami. That's where they made love for the first time. The beginning of what he called a great modern love story. Yes, he actually said that. Even though Diddy cheated. Even though Cassie was physically abused. Even though it played like a toxic script from a tragedy. Still, the defense insisted, she stayed. She wanted it. They said the sex was consensual, passionate. That she wasn't a victim. She won, they told the jury. Diddy's behind bars. She's got $30 million. She won. It was audacious. Because in that moment, they weren't just defending Diddy. They were turning Cassie into the villain. A woman who was hurt, but still walked away as the victor. And that was just the beginning. Because while the jury took it all in, the prosecutors weren't having it. They waited until court paused and then hit the judge with 3 sharp objections. First, they said the defense was way out of line, telling the jury to question why Diddy was even charged in the first place. Second, they claimed he twisted the infamous hotel video, calling the violent assault a mere misdemeanor. Third, he allegedly lied, saying Diddy was charged with kidnapping and arson, when those were actually just elements of the broader RICO case. The judge stepped in. He told the defense to clarify that last claim, but stood firm on the rest. The defense lawyer refused to back down, saying sarcasm was fair game and the assault was a state matter. The prosecutor wanted a curative instruction for the jury. The judge agreed. And he didn't mince words. "Please don't do that again," he warned. And then, bluntly, "That was grossly improper." Once court resumed, the defense tackled one of the biggest allegations, forced labor. And to do it, they went back to Mia. Not the Mia who testified about being overworked and abused, but the Mia from the birthday videos, the Mia from the text messages, the Mia who made scrapbooks. Every sign shows she loved working for Diddy, the defense said. If she didn't, she could have left. They even read a text Mia sent to someone named KK, where she threatened to kill herself after being fired. Would someone who hated their job react like that? Then came the videos, birthday clips she made for Diddy. "This is the real her," the lawyer told the jury. "What you saw on the stand. That was the act." He pulled out a scrapbook Mia made, held it up high for the jury to see, then turned and showed it to the entire gallery. "You can't fake this kind of love," he said. Then he read a letter inside. And his voice, it cracked. Emotion filled the room. "He makes people's worlds," the defense said, choking up. "Don't lose sight of that." Then he pointed to a huge poster board, one Mia had made for Diddy's birthday. She'd posted it online, surrounded by all of Diddy's team. "What comes to mind when you look at this?" he asked the jury. Then offered his own words: joy, diversity, family. "This is the inner circle," he said. "There's KK. There's D-Rock. There's Fahim." Then he paused. This is your racketeering enterprise?" He told the jury Diddy didn't create a criminal operation. He created something extraordinary. "He moved people," he said. "Their hearts. Their souls. And honestly, the whole moment, it was giving Johnny Cochran. The drama. The performance. The theater. This wasn't about evidence. It was about emotion. He was drawing the jury into a world where love outweighed law. And for some in the courtroom gallery, it was working. Then came the texts. Messages between Mia and KK. The defense read them out loud, pointing to Mia's obvious heartbreak. The last thing she wanted was to leave, they argued. And he's being charged with forced labor? Then the defense shifted, taking aim at the drug distribution charge. He reminded the jury what the prosecution said in their closing, that the drugs were a distraction. But not to him. He said, "It matters." He quoted the jury instructions. "Personal use doesn't equal distribution." "No one said they knew they were committing a crime," he told the jury. "There's no allegation that Diddy was selling drugs. Did he use them? Yes. But was that criminal racketeering? No," he argued. "That was personal. That was lifestyle. These are things he did with his girlfriends," he said. "Together. This is personal use." He reminded them, Cassie herself said Diddy was addicted. And what about the assistants, those allegedly sourcing drugs? "What Mr. Combs did with his assistants?" he asked. "It's not that different. You're not going to see Beyoncé at CVS either." Then he brought it home with a final quote. "When it comes to drugs, they're just doing what creative people do. So, if you're in the music industry, hard drugs are just part of the culture? Well, okay then." Finally, the defense tackled the sex trafficking charge, focusing on Cassie's allegations. He read a few flirty texts she sent to Diddy, but then stopped. "You don't need me to read them all," he said. "She wanted it. She liked it." And then came one of the wildest, most provocative lines from the defense. It was bold. It was raw. And honestly, it had people in the courtroom holding their breath. The lawyer stood there and said something that made jaws drop. "You can dislike your girlfriend's preferences, but that doesn't make it coercion." Then, with no shame, he leaned in deeper. "There's no proof Diddy made money from anything Cassie described," he told the jury. "They were swinging. That was their lifestyle. This wasn't a trafficking ring, it was a twisted love story." Then came the quote that will live in courtroom infamy. "If your partner really likes a certain thing," he said, "and you don't, but you really love them, then your likes and their likes become one. And that's what love is." Yes, that was actually said in a federal courtroom, and people nearly lost it. It sounded less like legal defense and more like an erotic self-help seminar. But there it was, broadcast loud and clear, straight to the jury box. No one knows how the jurors processed it, but one thing's for sure. They'll never forget it. Then, in another twist, he brought up Cassie's romantic history. "She dated Michael B. Jordan," he said. "You know, the most handsome man in the world." What he was trying to say, Cassie always had power. She had choices. She had agency. "She's a sexy woman," he added. "She had the right to move on. This was her lifestyle choice too." Then came the most uncomfortable part. He said, even if she didn't want it at first, you can come to want it over time. And then he got even more specific. He asked the jury to consider, was she okay doing 110 freak-offs, but not 3 more? If you open that door, where does it stop? And another line. If 75 of them were consensual, when exactly did it change? He said this wasn't exploitation. It was a relationship. Messy, yes, but mutual. Then came the part of the trial everyone was waiting for. The Intercontinental Hotel video. The defense didn't run from it. But they didn't frame it the way most people saw it either. That viral video of Diddy beating Cassie in a hotel hallway? According to them, it wasn't about dominance or sexual control. It wasn't about the escort who was waiting naked inside. No. It was about a phone. And not Cassie's phone, Diddy's phone. That's what the fight was over, he said. Not sex. Not trafficking. Not control. Just a phone. Then he shifted focus to the hotel security guard, Israel Flores, the one who responded to the scene. He said Flores didn't act like someone who just witnessed an assault. Didn't look for injuries. Didn't treat it like something urgent. The implication? It couldn't have been that serious. Then he started reading Cassie's texts from the days that followed. She wasn't angry or traumatized, he argued. She sounded casual. Like nothing had really happened. One message read, "How would I know if the drugs are going to be so bad or if you won't drink too much?" That line, he said, was the real explanation for what happened that night. Drugs and alcohol. Not abuse. Not coercion. Just a toxic mix of substances and emotions. And then the defense made one of the most dramatic pivots yet. If you were Sean Combs, he said to the jury, and you were in Tokyo, 1,000 people would recognize you. So why, he asked, would you stand half-naked in a hotel hallway, if not for drugs? And then, finally, he acknowledged what everyone saw on the tape. It's bad, he said. It's a crime. It's illegal. But here comes the twist. He's not charged with domestic violence. Let that sink in. Then came the rape allegation. Cassie had testified that Diddy raped her. But the defense pointed out, there's no rape charge in this case. He pulled up her original testimony. She was asked what happened at her house that day. And she stopped short. She didn't mention the rape in that moment. Maybe, he hinted, it was because the question asked about the day, and the alleged rape happened at night. But still, he questioned it. Did she miss the prompt? He asked. Or, maybe it didn't happen. He pointed to inconsistencies in her story. Cassie had said, both in her civil lawsuit and to prosecutors, that the alleged rape happened in September 2018. But then, he showed the jury something else. A flirtatious text Cassie sent Diddy later that same month. September 27th. I had a lot of fun with you. Thanks for the night. I told myself I didn't want anything to happen. That's what she wrote. Does that sound like someone who had just been raped? Then he read another message, from Diddy this time. It was after they had split up. But they were still sleeping together. And one time, he said, her husband FaceTimed during one of those encounters. Cassie claimed she didn't know who was calling. But the defense wasn't buying it. She lied, he said, because her now husband called her out. And then came the punch. Because of those sweet texts from September. She couldn't stick to that timeline. So she had to move the alleged rape back to August. He even read another text from August 20th, sent by Diddy. I know I didn't turn you on. I fell off. And his takeaway? That's not a confession. It's not an admission of guilt. It's not evidence of rape. There was no rape. That's what the defense said, point blank. And then, they pivoted to Cassie's career. They weren't just defending Diddy anymore. They were now discrediting her talent. According to them, Cassie wasn't neglected by bad boy records at all. In fact, they pointed to someone from inside the label, Capricorn Clark, who once said that Cassie received the lion's share of resources. But here's where it gets tricky. Capricorn also described Cassie as a studio musician, a polite way of saying she wasn't great on stage. She's not Beyoncé. So, wait. One moment the defense calls Capricorn Clark a liar, and the next, they're quoting her to make a point? Can they really have it both ways? That's something only the jury can decide. Then they threw another punch. Since leaving Bad Boy, Cassie hasn't exactly taken over the music industry. There's no evidence, the defense argued, that Diddy sabotaged her career or forced her into those now infamous freak-offs. In fact, they claimed, Cassie canceled her tour shortly after receiving her lawsuit settlement. And when it came to one of the prosecution's most chilling claims, that Cassie participated in freak-offs under threats of violence, the defense walked a tightrope. They didn't deny that Cassie felt pressured. But they told the jury, look at what was actually proven, not just what was said. Then, they turned to some of the most graphic, disturbing evidence in the entire trial, the videos. The freak-off footage. Cassie and Jane didn't watch them. But the jury did. And the defense said, yes, it was uncomfortable. But it's still just evidence. No different than a doctor examining something clinical. They told the jury, we were never meant to see this. But you did. Then came a detail that stunned the room. The videos. They were stored on Cassie's own iPad. And they stayed there for 6 years. 6 years. Cassie claimed the iPad was damaged. But when investigators recovered it, they were able to extract the files. So, the defense asked, why did she keep them? Was it that Cassie thought the videos were destroyed? Or was it that she held onto them for protection? In case someone else tried to use them? The jury will have to decide. Then the defense circled back to those freak-off videos, and gave a very different interpretation than the government. What you saw, they argued, was not violence, not abuse, not coercion. They described the setting. Beautiful hotel rooms. R&B music by Bryson Tiller and Usher. Low lighting. Mood set. Romantic. Elegant. Sexy. This isn't criminal, they said. It's a lifestyle. And shockingly, one juror even nodded. You read that right. As the defense described the music in the background, one juror mouthed the words. Yeah, there was. That moment could be critical. Then the defense tackled one of the most serious accusations. That Diddy threatened to leak sex tapes to blackmail Cassie. And they dismissed it. 0% chance, they said. He was all talk. They compared it to someone shouting, I'm gonna kill you, during a fight. Not a real plan, just a flash of anger. But let's not forget this. After threatening to show Cassie's parents the freak-off tapes, Diddy demanded $20,000 from those same parents. They mortgaged their house to send him the money. Then, just like that, he sent the money back. The prosecutors said that was all about control. An ultimate power play. The defense. They reframed it. They tried to strip away the taboo. Repaint those nights as something beautiful. Elegant dinners. Laughter. Shared intimacy. When you take away the sex part, they said, these were beautiful nights. But then they asked a chilling question. Can you take away the sex part? This is a trial, they reminded the jury. It's not a date night. And for the first time, we got an actual description of what was on those freak-off tapes. Not from the government, but from the defense. According to them, the mood was friendly. People smiling, laughing, hanging out, eating food. Cassie eating watermelon. Music playing. The defense said, this wasn't abuse. This was escape. Emotional intimacy. Homemade porn. And yes, they actually said that. They called it homemade porn. And then added, brace yourself. This is a popular thing these days. Really? Because most people wouldn't describe a setup involving $10,000 hotel rooms, multiple escorts, and watching your partner have sex with them while you masturbate and record as popular. But that's what the defense told the jury. Maybe the jury will agree. Maybe they won't. Then the defense shifted focus to Jane. They said Jane loved luxury. Yachts. Villas. Designer bags. Instagrammable moments. She wasn't hiding her motives, they argued. She wanted the lifestyle. But even still, they said, the love was real. They truly loved each other. Then, with one last breath of drama, the lawyer looked at the jury and asked, Not every night in a hotel was sex trafficking. At least, that's what the defense argued. So then, which ones were? They pushed the jury to think, if Jane didn't like the man she was paired with, he was sent packing. Quote, he was sent packing, meaning Jane had control too. And then the defense tried to dismantle a major pillar of the prosecution, that the men involved were trafficked. That Diddy transported them over state lines, turning hotel suites into federal crime scenes. But what came next? It was nothing short of jaw-dropping. Diddy's lawyer looked the jury dead in the eyes and said, the men weren't paid for sex, they were compensated for their time. Yes, that was the argument. Not for sex. For time. And you could almost feel the tension ripple through the room. Even repeating that felt surreal. But the defense doubled down. They pointed to a now infamous moment involving a male escort from Cowboys for Angels. Diddy allegedly paid for this escort, a guy the defense mockingly called a bum-ass cowboy, but the guy couldn't perform. And Diddy? He didn't want to pay. The escort's agent didn't care. Whether the guy was skydiving or chilling on a rooftop, she said, Diddy was paying for time. That's it. The defense clung to that. If you're paying for someone's time, not their performance, how can that be prostitution? But here's where it all starts to unravel. Because if Diddy was angry that he didn't get the sex, if he refused to pay because the guy didn't perform, then isn't that the very proof that he was paying for sex? That logic, no matter how polished, felt paper-thin. Let's be real. Most jurors, and most people, know the deal. Sex workers don't get paid to come over and chit-chat. Then the defense circled back to Jane. Her words. Her choices. Jane had refused to use the word regret on the stand. Then came the final push, the centerpiece of the entire case, racketeering. This was the prosecution's crown jewel, their biggest weapon. And the defense, they went straight for the heart of it. They didn't just deny it, they dismantled it. First, they started with a simple question. What is an enterprise, really? They reminded the jury, Diddy was indicted alone. That's right, alone. No one said, I was part of his enterprise, the defense argued. No one testified, I helped him traffic people. No one claimed, I helped him obstruct justice. So if no one else was involved, where's the enterprise? When the judge instructs the jury to base their decision on evidence, not theory, the defense made it clear, there isn't any. Because an enterprise, under RICO law, only exists because of its racketeering. That's what gives it form, structure, legs to stand on. And so the defense asked, how is Diddy supposedly running a criminal enterprise through sex with his girlfriends? They pushed back on every detail. Even if his assistants sometimes grabbed a bottle of baby oil, that was, what, 1% of their job? Maybe even less. And if this case felt complicated, maybe it wasn't a criminal organization at all. Maybe it was exactly what it looked like. Sex. Relationships. A little partying. And yes, drugs. But personal. Not criminal. Then the defense zeroed in on the word that started this all, conspiracy. Diddy was charged with it. But conspiracy requires more than one person. Who's the co-conspirator? The defense said, there isn't one. Then came a strange moment. A chuckle even. Diddy's longtime chief of staff, KK, Christina Courtroom, got a shout-out. She's the single most helpful person, the defense said with a smirk. Everyone needs a KK. A laugh line, sure. But in the background, a whisper of what might be coming next. Because if KK gets indicted after this, there's going to be an entire episode about that. Then came Diddy's security team. The government tried to paint them like mob muscle. But the defense snapped back. Of course he has security. This isn't sinister, it's standard. He's rich. He's famous. He's Diddy. Anyone at that level has security, they said. Then they turned to Cassie and Jane, two of the case's central figures. Both admitted they called KK when things went bad. They called D-Rock when they needed help. That's not racketeering, the defense argued. That's support. And then came a line that had the whole courtroom reeling. If John Gotti was at your door, the defense asked, Would you call Sammy the Bull to get rid of him? No, of course not. Because that's actual racketeering. Cassie and Jane didn't call co-conspirators. They called people who could help. But here's where it got messy. Because according to the government's case, when those calls were made, Diddy was kept in the loop. Texts, communications, messages. He knew what was happening. So if those calls were about escaping abuse, and Diddy was being updated, was that help or control? That's a question for the jury. Then the defense accused the government of something deeper. Planting ideas. Making suggestions without showing proof. They're putting a seed in your head, the defense warned. Is that fair? They told the jury. You have every right to question the government. To question how this case was built. To question why it was built. Then they turned to one of the most disturbing claims in the trial, something that made headlines across the country. That Diddy ordered escorts to urinate on Cassie. But the defense flipped it. They said Daniel Phillips, one of the escorts, testified it was Cassie who made that request, not Diddy. But let's not forget, the prosecution wasn't done yet. Because in their rebuttal, they'd returned to this exact moment with receipts. Cassie had testified that Diddy directed the escort to urinate into her mouth. She said she asked him to stop. That she felt like she was drowning. But it didn't stop. It was one of the most haunting testimonies of the entire trial. And no one in that courtroom will forget it. Still, the defense pushed forward. Ask yourself, they said, when do I stop trusting the government? They pointed out that even after an entire raid on Diddy's home, the feds couldn't clearly say where the guns were found. But testimony revealed something else. Those weapons were allegedly discovered in the master bedroom, right next to all the sex gear. The government argued this wasn't just weird, it was dangerous. Guns plus coercive sex equals fear and control. From beginning to end, the defense painted the investigation as chaotic, sloppy, rushed, reckless. Is this the best the government has to offer? The defense asked. And then came the closing lines, the final curtain on 4 hours of emotional, theatrical, and sharp-tongued argument. I believe the evidence shows the government targeted Sean Combs, the lawyer said. That prosecutors didn't build a case, they piggybacked on Cassie Ventura's lawsuit, and pursued Diddy because of who he is. But the judge wasn't having it. He immediately told the jury to disregard that statement. Just like earlier in the day, when the defense hinted that jurors should consider why charges were brought. The judge shut it down. Twice, the court was told. That's not how the law works. And now, after hours of spectacle, it was nearly over. But not quite. Because the prosecution still had one more shot. The last word. In one last desperate plea, the lawyer stared the jury down. It takes courage to acquit, he said slowly. This is your courtroom. This is your house. He wanted them to feel it, that they held the power. And he asked them to do what he called the hardest thing of all. Summon that courage, and acquit Diddy on all counts. He is none of these things, the lawyer insisted. Return him to his family. But now, after 4 long weeks, after explosive testimony, after freak-offs, bruises, and escorts, it was time for the final voice. The last word. The voice the jury would hear before everything went silent, and the deliberations would begin behind closed doors. That voice belonged to the prosecution. And when she stood up, she didn't hold back. This wasn't just closing arguments. This was scorched earth. She was the second female prosecutor to deliver a closing in this case. And she came for blood. She told the jury, blunt and raw, that Diddy's lawyer had just spent 4 hours blaming everyone but Diddy. The victims, the government, the media. Everyone but the man whose violence and threats, she said, started this entire nightmare. He's tossing up excuse after excuse, she snapped, for inexcusable criminal behavior. And then she drove the nail in. This trial is about how, in Diddy's world, no was never an option. That line, dark, loaded, and devastating, hung in the air. She looked directly at the jury and said Diddy wanted them to believe that all these women, Cassie, Jane, Mia, were liars. Every single one. Lying under oath. Committing perjury.
And why?
For money. The prosecution wasn't buying it. She reminded the jury that Cassie and Mia had already been paid in their civil suits. They had no reason to lie now. And as for Jane, she told the jury under oath, she doesn't even plan to sue. So what would be the point of perjury? Then the prosecutor went for the jugular. She told them to look, really look, at the Cassie beating video. Cassie, lying there. Not fighting back. Still. Quiet. Resigned. That, she said, is what it looks like when someone has a lot of practice being beaten. And then came the line that might haunt that jury room. If there was even one instance where these women didn't want to participate in these freak-offs. That's all you need. One. Because under the law, one is enough. She told the jury. That's the only question that matters. Was there one? Then she answered for them. Of course there was. It was bold. It was final. And it was devastating. Because now, if the jury had any doubts about all the details, all the texts, all the bruises, all the mixed signals, they were told. It only takes one moment of non-consent. And this man is guilty of sex trafficking. And let's be real, there was plenty of evidence that there was more than one. The prosecutor said Diddy used money and fame like weapons. He dangled careers, promises, private jets, penthouse dreams. And then, once these women were trapped in his world, he used those tools to control them, to own them. She acknowledged the loving text messages the defense showed. The "I miss you" and "I want you" notes. And then she turned that argument on its head. They wanted to have sex with their boyfriend, she said. Not with the prostitutes. Not with the escorts. Not with the endless line of men filing into those hotel rooms so Diddy could sit and watch. It was vicious. And it struck deep. Then she took on one of the defense's most ridiculous claims, that Diddy never paid male escorts for sex. Only for their time. The prosecutor flat out mocked it. It doesn't even pass the laugh test, she said. When he flew them out, paid for them, housed them and set up those nights, it wasn't for scintillating conversation. It was for sex. And here's the legal kicker. She reminded the jury, it didn't even matter if every encounter had payment. The intent to pay. The intent to transport someone across state lines for sex. That alone is enough for sex trafficking. And then, with venom, she added. Maybe some of those escorts would have had sex for free, even in front of a masked megastar celebrity. But that doesn't change the law. Then she turned to one of the defense's coldest claims, that Diddy simply didn't understand when sex was consensual and when it was coerced. She took a moment, and said of Cassie, to suggest that she was some kind of winner in this story is ridiculous. What was her prize? She asked. Then she answered her own question. UTIs. Bruises. Scars. She told you, the prosecutor said, she would give back every dollar. And then, finally, she addressed the night of the alleged kidnapping. The defense had claimed that Diddy didn't even have a gun. But the prosecution snapped back. Just because she didn't say the word gun doesn't mean he didn't have one. And then came the final dagger. Diddy may be a hands and fists kind of guy with his girlfriends, she said. But when it comes to men... She didn't need to finish that sentence. Everyone knew what she meant.